Welcome to the fourth week of our study on Isaiah, as we are going through the larger or more obscure books of the Bible, section by section, book by book. Our goal is to help you to be able to take the smaller parts of Isaiah when you're reading the Bible on your own and be able to view it and understand it in the midst of the entire book. Now, my view, as I've said earlier, is that the purpose of Isaiah could be divided into two. There are two different reasons that God delivered the prophecies that he did through the mouth of Isaiah to his time period. And those purposes are very applicable today. The first message of Isaiah is a message of judgment, specifically judgment to those who are no longer able to see their own problem with sin. The Jewish people of Isaiah's day, they thought they were good enough. They thought they were safe. They thought they were holy because of their ancestry and because of their location. They could look at the Temple Mount and say, there is Solomon's temple. It has stood for 200 years as a testament to God's concern, God's protection of his people in Judah. And God cares for us. And it doesn't really matter how we live. It doesn't really matter how faithful we are to him, but because of where we live, because of who our parents are, we are safe. And Isaiah comes to say, God does care what you believe. God does care in how you live. You are not loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You are not loving your neighbor as yourself. Therefore, I will judge you. The message of the Song of the Vineyard pictured God's judgment that was coming upon Israel and Judah, and Isaiah's son Maher-shalal-hash-baz, which we looked at last week in Isaiah 8, also pointed toward that judgment. But Isaiah came with two purposes, one to preach judgment, the other was to preach hope. Hope for the small remnant of God's people who would continue to place their faith in him. So we saw a little bit of that message of hope at the very end of Isaiah chapter 6. Then we saw how that hope would come through Emmanuel, who was also the child in Isaiah 9, 1 through 7. So in Isaiah chapters 1 through 6, we are introduced to the dual purposes of Isaiah. And then in Isaiah chapter 7 through chapter 12, we take those purposes of the book and we place them in a historical context with King Ahaz ruling over the nation of Judah and the issues that he's having with his northern neighbors in Israel, Syria, and Assyria. This morning we're going to look at Isaiah chapter 9, verse 8 through the end of Isaiah chapter 12. And we're going to see prophecies in this section, that were given as a fulfillment of what was prophesied earlier in the historical context of Isaiah chapter 7. So two prophecies that I think would be much easier to comprehend if we divided Isaiah 9:8 through Isaiah 12:6 into two separate chapters instead of 3 3/4 chapters. And hopefully after we divide this section in a little bit more logical way, you'll be able to understand it better. This is one of those places where chapter divisions just drive me crazy. Last week we ended at Isaiah chapter 9, verse 7, because that is where the section of prophecies regarding the boys, Sher-Jashub, Emmanuel, the child, Maher-shalal-hash-baz, that's where the prophecies of those boys ended, was at the end of Isaiah 9:7. So remember, Isaiah 7:1 through Isaiah 9:7 is the historical basis for the prophecies that we're going to look at and discuss now. An entirely new section begins in Isaiah 9:8, a section most likely still rooted in what we just talked about in the previous lesson. That is Ahaz's rejection of God's promise that I will protect you from Israel and Syria. Don't be afraid of your two northern neighbors. In a few years, they will be no more. So Isaiah 7 through 12 is in one entire time frame that should be divided into two separate sections. So Isaiah 9:8 through Isaiah 12:6 is a group of prophecies that are given as a result of the events that we saw last week with Isaiah and Ahaz and all of Isaiah's sons. So the year approximately in which these prophecies take place, again, which we saw last week, was the year 734 BC. And since Israel had forsaken the Lord with their alliance with Syria, since Judah had forsaken the Lord with their alliance with Assyria, judgment was coming because God's people had abandoned him. And we see what that judgment will be in Isaiah 9:8 through Isaiah 10:19. And since a hope is also needed for those who will be faithful in the midst of that judgment, we will find that hope beginning in Isaiah chapter 10, verse 20. So if I was making up chapter divisions in the Bible, if somebody came up to me and said, Shawn, why don't you make up some new chapter divisions for Isaiah, which is something no one would probably ever do because people would complain about my chapter divisions just as much as they complain about the current ones, I would say Isaiah 9:8 through Isaiah 10:19 is one chapter. It is a chapter that I would title Judgment on the Arrogant. And then Isaiah 10:20 through Isaiah 12:6 would be a chapter on hope for the remnant. So I suggest if you have your Bible in front of you and you make notes in it, you write in your Bible, make a note that Isaiah 9:8 through 10:19 is one section. It could be seen as one chapter, and it is all about judgment for those who are arrogant. Israel and Syria, the two northern neighbors of Judah, they are arrogant because they want to overthrow the Davidic line and set up their own king in Judah. Judah was arrogant because Ahaz, the king of Judah, he refused to trust in the Lord. When Yahweh sent his prophet Isaiah, coming to him and saying, you can trust in me, ask any sign, make it as high as heaven, as low as Sheol, Ahaz says, I do not want to trust in the Lord. I will not put him to the test. And so Judah trusted in Assyria, and Assyria is the ultimate picture of those who are arrogant for their brutal warfare tactics, and they fail to see that they are a tool in the hands of God to bring judgment upon his people. So we can break this section down now also into two smaller sections. Isaiah 9:8 through 10:4 are judgments on Israel. Judgments on the northern nation of Israel for making their plans to attack Judah. We see this clearly in the very first verses of this section. The Lord sends a message against Jacob, and it falls on Israel. And all the people know it. That is Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, asserting in pride and in arrogance of heart. And Isaiah could not be any more clear who he is speaking against unless he's going to go out and beat his own horse. Because here he refers to Israel, Jacob, Ephraim, and Samaria, all titles that are used to refer to the northern nation of Israel. Basically saying now, however you want to name it, whatever you want to call that region north of Judah, they are arrogant in their disobedience of the Lord. They are prideful in their desire to conquer the Davidic line in Judah. But God shifts his audience rather quickly in Isaiah 10:5. He moves on away from Israel, probably also looking at Syria as well in judgment upon them, and begins instead to have judgment upon the bigger threat. Isaiah 10:5 says, woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger, and the staff in whose hand is my indignation. So then we have a section of judgments that are given on the nation of Assyria, specifically for their pride in doing what we see almost the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar later in the book of Daniel, this idea of saying, it is all by my strength, it is all by my cunning and my skill that I am able to dominate the world. And God needs to judge them to say, not so fast. There's one Lord of this world, and it is not Assyria. Now, this section is not just a judgment on Israel and Assyria, but there is also hints of judgment at one other group, and that is the people of Judah. There is judgment on Judah in this section, although it's small, and you can't see it unless you're really looking for it. And this kind of makes sense to me. If we remember, Isaiah is a prophet from Judah. He's prophesying in the courts of Judah. He had already taken the direct approach of directly prophesying against the people of Judah. That did not work well. They basically said, "Who are you? We don't care about listening to you, Isaiah." So I think this way he goes about a more of an indirect attack toward Judah, one for those that have eyes to see what it is that they're reading. And you see the indirect judgment on Judah in verses 11 and 12 of chapter 10 of Isaiah. "Shall I not do to Jerusalem and her images, just as I have done to Samaria and her idols? So it will be that when the Lord has completed all his work on Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, he will say, I will punish the fruit of the arrogant heart of the king of Assyria and the pomp of his haughtiness." In verse 11, we are reading the boasting of the nation of Assyria. They are boasting that they are going to trash the city of Jerusalem in the same way that they leveled the city of Samaria. And for the most part, they do trash Judah fairly significantly, taking over multiple cities and towns in Judah and really hemming in Jerusalem itself. And then in verse 12 of this chapter, we see the Lord now talking. And the Lord is talking about his work on Mount Zion, his work on Jerusalem. And in the midst of this context, we can only infer that Isaiah is talking about judgment from the Lord that will occur on the people of Judah. So while not as lengthy and not as explicit, we do see judgment on Judah for their pride in this section as well. So when you're reading through your Bible and you get to Isaiah 9:8, know that this is all about the judgment that will come on Israel and Judah and Assyria for their pride, for their wicked behavior in the days of Ahaz, and I would also add for their rejection of the prophecies of the coming Messiah. The explicit prophecies about Sher-Jashub, about Emmanuel, about Maher-Shalal-Hashbaz, about the child who will come and redeem God's people. They rejected the offer that God had given to them for peace, and the result is judgment will fall upon them. Judgments that we see fulfilled in history as these nations beat up upon one another, and then most explicitly in the days of Hezekiah, which we'll see later in the book of Isaiah, when the angel of the Lord comes and delivers judgment upon the Assyrians. Judgment upon a people in Israel, a people in Judah, a people in Syria, a people in Assyria, who cannot even see their own sin, who cannot see that wickedness is wickedness. Which now brings us to the need of our hope. Where are the people of God to go during this time when judgment is falling upon them? How can they continue to trust in the Lord when he's got the Assyrians bearing down upon them? The Babylonians will follow the Assyrians. How can they continue to trust in the Lord through such hardship and grief and pain? And that is what we see in Isaiah 10:20 through Isaiah 12:6. A very important series of prophecies, of poetry, one that we can turn to in times where we feel like we're getting so caught up in the cursed world that is falling upon us in pain and distress, and we say, I don't know where my hope is, Lord. Here is where we can find hope. And just like in the previous section on judgments that was divided into two smaller portions, this section on hope can be divided into smaller portions as well, but we'll divide this one into three different portions. The three different portions all talking about what I'm going to refer to as the sprout kingdom. First, we're going to talk about the stump of the sprout kingdom, then the sprout himself, and then the result, the rejoicing over the sprout and his kingdom. So Isaiah 10, 20 through 34 is all about the stump through which the sprout will grow. So we just read about the judgment talked about the judgment that God is going to have on all the nations surrounding Judah, including Judah itself. And all that will be left behind will be a small stump that will remain. So think of God going through and tearing down all the trees of the forest, tearing most of them right up out of their roots, and all that's left behind is a small stump of a tree that was cut down. And in chapter 10, this small stump is called the remnant of God's people. And we see this in verses 20 and 21. Now in that day, the remnant of Israel and those of the house of Jacob who have escaped will never again rely on the one who struck them. And we know that that is Assyria based on the context. But will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. The remnant, or as they are called in chapter 11, the stump, this idea of the remnant is a key theme throughout the book of Isaiah. Remembering that the name of Isaiah's first son was even Sher-Jashub, which means a remnant will return. And in these verses, God promises to both protect the remnant and also to overthrow the Assyrians who are threatening them. And then in chapter 11 of Isaiah, after talking about the stump at the end of chapter 10, he returns back again to talk about Emmanuel, who was first introduced to us in Isaiah chapter 7. So Emmanuel is introduced to us in Isaiah chapter 7. Then he's brought up again and described some more in Isaiah chapter 9. And in that chapter, he's given the title of the child. And we have that wonderful passage that we love to sing about every Christmas season, our wonderful counselor. And now he's given a new title in Isaiah chapter 12, the title that is referred to in most Bible translations as the branch. Although if I was making my own translation, I would not translate this as the branch, but as a sprout or a shoot. Recently in my backyard, I chopped down about 15 small trees. Cut them all down in the fall of last year. And while I've pulled out some of the stumps of those old trees, a few of them are still here in the following spring. And out of a couple of those stumps right now, there are plants that are shooting up out of the stump itself. And this is the image that Isaiah is trying to go for with this prophecy. And that's why I say a branch doesn't look right at all. You wouldn't look at a stump with a little plant growing out of the middle of it and say, hey, look, there's a branch growing out of that stump. So what we're talking about here is a shoot, a small sprout of a plant. And the sprout of Isaiah chapter 11 is pictured not as the nation of Israel, but as an individual, as a king. And let's read specifically how Isaiah describes the sprout because, let's just be honest, his words are a lot better than my own. Then a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a description by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he will judge the poor, and decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. And he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Also righteousness will be the belt about his loins, and faithfulness the belt about his waist. The sprout is an individual who will come and who will rule over God's people with God's power. And the list of qualities that this sprout king is said to possess is just as impressive as the list of names or titles he is given in Isaiah chapter 9. So we read that he has the powers, the abilities, the traits of the Spirit of God, wisdom, understanding, counsel, strength, knowledge, and the fear of the Lord will all be his. The sprout will rule with the same power and the same justice of God himself. And so if we're tracking Emmanuel well, and this is why I want to do this type of a study instead of trying to go verse by verse through a book like Isaiah, is so that we can look at it stepped back a little bit and understand themes that are developing. We see this one messianic coming king. We see him introduced in Isaiah chapter 7 with the prophecy of the virgin birth. And then we see him in Isaiah chapter 9. He's the child. We have the titles that he will be given. And then in Isaiah chapter 11, he is brought to us again as the branch or as the sprout. And here we see that he will possess all of these divine attributes of the Lord. The Messianic king is a king to be anticipated, a king that we should hope for and long for. And one of the most wondrous descriptions of Jesus Christ in all of the Bible is found by tracing the virgin-born one, the child, and the sprout in Isaiah chapter 7 through 12. And then in verses 6 through 16 of Isaiah chapter 11, we receive a picture of the kingdom of the sprout king. So what will the kingdom of Emmanuel look like? What will it be like to live underneath his rule? And this is what I would call the quieting of the earth. Taking the noise of the curse and turning it from a 10 on the scale all the way down to a 1. The vast majority of the pains and the anguish of the curse that we endure today will be removed. Many physical effects of the curse will be brought out, will be taken away as the wolf will lie down with a lamb. We've taken our kids out for a few walks, as I've said, during this quarantine time, and we've taken them out on what we call alligator hunting a couple of times. And that is, we're going on a walk where we know there might be alligators. Keep your eyes peeled and let's see who can see the biggest or the most alligators. And I can't wait for a day when in Emmanuel's kingdom, we can walk down those same paths. We can see a little alligator swimming along next to the boardwalk, and instead of taking 2 steps back and being as far as we can get from that alligator, where you could just reach down, pick up the little guy, hold him in your arms, give him a little pet. I don't know if you felt alligator skin before, but it's got a great feeling. I think baby alligators are cuter and would be better pets than puppies, but puppies turn into dogs and baby alligators turn into alligators. So that's not going to work. I need to wait till the curse is lifted for the millennial kingdom. The curse will be lessened also in verses 10 through 16 by having fewer wars of man. You won't have the nations battling against nations as we have in the past. Those will be ancient stories of a time gone by. Israel and Judah will no longer be at war with one another. I think today one hope that we would have is that Palestine and Israel would be at peace together. Jews and Arabs will live in harmony and unity instead of at war with each other. And when I examine the pictures of the sprout kingdom in Isaiah, what I see is the time to look forward to of the millennial kingdom. The 1,000-year reign of Christ that will take place before the final battle and the great white throne judgment. The day when the curse will be pulled back to a great degree because the sprout king, because Emmanuel is living with us, but we haven't seen the new earth created at that point. We have seen this earth restored to a level that has not been seen for thousands of years. The kingdom of the branch, the kingdom of the sprout will be good days. They will be days to anticipate. They will be days to build up and increase the hope in our hearts. And when we're thinking about those coming days of how amazing the millennial kingdom is, how amazing the sprout kingdom will be, what we need to always remind ourselves is that we are primarily not to be looking forward to the kingdom itself, but to the king who will bring the kingdom. We are looking forward to the coming of a single man, a single king. We are looking for God himself to come to this earth and to reign over man. Because when he comes, there will finally be peace. And then in chapter 12 of Isaiah, what we're given is the result of the peace. Isaiah chapter 12, verses 1 through 6, a really short chapter, is a song. It is the song that God's people will use to honor him, to glorify him, and to praise him during the millennial kingdom. So if you want to know what the praises sung to God will sound like in eternity when we're living face to face in Jesus Christ, well, we get it in Isaiah 12, 1 through 6. Then you will say on that day, I will give thanks to you, O Lord, for although you were angry with me, your anger is turned away and you comfort me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. For the Lord God is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. Therefore, you will joyously draw water from the springs of salvation, and in that day you will say, give thanks to the Lord, call on his name, make known his deeds among the peoples, make them remember that his name is exalted. Praise the Lord in song, for he has done excellent things. Let this be known throughout the earth. Cry aloud and shout for joy, O inhabitants of Zion, for great in your midst is the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah 12, 1 through 6 is a sneak peek of the worship of the millennial kingdom, the sprout kingdom, the millennial kingdom, and the kingdom of the Son. This is the songs that we're going to sing during those years. This is the praise that we will be given to the Lord. And we're living in a time where right now, hope is hard to come by for a lot of people. I think in every period of history, hope is hard to come by for all too many. We look around us and we see forests that have been chopped down. We see mighty trees in our lives that are now nothing but stumps to trip over. The shade is gone. The animals have fled to greener pastures. And all hope looks lost. And this is the time, these are the days to say, God may be bringing his curse upon us now. Judgment may be falling on this world in this hour because of the sins of mankind. But a day is coming. A day is coming because a king is coming. And out of the stump that we have before us today will grow a new kingdom, the likes of which this world has never seen before. A kingdom of peace, a kingdom of triumph, and a kingdom of hope. So Isaiah 9, 8 through 12, 6 tells us how to respond to the judgment of God that falls upon these wicked days. And that is one, we should flee from the judgment and find forgiveness in the King. And then two, we should hope. We should hope in the coming Emmanuel. We should hope in the wonderful Counselor. Hope in the mighty God. Hope in the sprout that will grow from the stump. So I hope that this will help you when next time you're reading through Isaiah 7 through 12, that it will be more of an experience of worship, more of an experience of knowledge as you better understand the text that is before you.